Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, your favorite podcast of all time, the official podcast of Neo Tokyo.
What's up, crypto gamers? I'm pleased to share I've got some updates on Shrapnel. First off, in regard to the litigation, they are open to a reasonable settlement, but they are determined to protect their rights in court and share that they have strong lawyers who will be there to protect them. That statement was shared on their Twitter. Now, on the game side, they have a event planned for the end of November where people are going to be able to dive back into the sacrifice zone for 7 days straight. This event will be aimed at celebrating the community in the last year that they had, and they're going to pack that week full of prizes. There's going to be digital rewards. There's even going to be physical rewards. I hear rumors about controllers and graphic cards, and there's going to be some updates to gameplay too. So they're going to have Revolver, they're going to have a new AR, and I even hear there's going to be a big announcement that week. So certainly stay tuned for more details. When we have a date to share, we will certainly share it. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Today we have the gentleman from Carbonated. What's up, guys? Josh and Travis. How are you?
Hey, great. Nice to be here.
I'm doing all right. Life's good. Still alive. One more year around the sun, as they say.
Gotta love that. And as always, the greatest co-host of all time, Mr. Crypto Atheist and Jared Bradley. What's up, guys?
What's going on, Ben? Stoked to be talking some crypto gaming.
Let's go. I'm excited. Welcome, Carbonated.
Let's do it. Okay, so are we talking about bubbly drinks or are we talking about gaming? You guys are Carbonated. Give us the 411. Let's lay the foundation. We want to hear it all.
Sweet. Well, let's go back to the old days. So first, where the name came from. Carbonated, the bubbly drink, is not far off. I wasn't going to talk about that, but you brought it up, so might as well throw it in there. I actually grabbed this name in 1994, 94, 95, 94, something like that. I think 95. Back when everyone was gobbling up, domains, and it was like the exciting thing. And me and a couple friends of mine post college were sort of like, oh, we're gonna make a video game company one day, and we should grab a name. And of course, like all the good ones, business.com were taken, coolgames.com were taken. They're all gone. And we were sort of looking around and we were going through everything, and I just saw Carbonate, and I was like, oh, it sounds cool. It's like carbon life form, but also like bubbly drink, like effervescent, lots of ideas flowing. And I was like, that just sounds cool. So we grabbed the name and I sat on it, and we made some really silly website, and some back in like pre-MySpace days, we put like our faces on it, like, hey, we're single guys, come check us out and come to our website. We have a business or something. It's like 95 when it was pretty much garbage. But it was always the idea to put a video game company behind it. And so I sat on it for forever. And, throughout my career, I held on to it. And then, many years later, I'll get to that in a second. But at one point, we're like, let's start a video game company. And I was like, well, I've been sitting on this name for like 2 decades. I might as well put it to work. So I've sat on it for a long time. There was another studio that Microsoft had that was called the Carbonated, which was a Microsoft studio. But we actually, the name Carbonated and us holding on to the domain preceded that company by kind of like 10 years, I think. So we've had it for a long time. But yeah, that's kind of where the company comes from. I don't know if you want me to go through like a little bit of my history or just jump right into company history, or how do you guys want to get into this business?
So the beauty of long form podcasting is that we could do all of it. So it's open-ended. Take it where it needs to go. All
right. Well, I'll do a little bit of the story thread from when Carbonated name was captured back in 1994, 95 or something like that. Let's see. Then, I'm an old timer, so I've been in the video game industry since the late 80s, early 90s. Started at a company called PF Magic, and PF Magic was back in the Philips CDI kind of CD-ROM era, up in Northern California, the San Francisco area. I'm from there. I kind of grew up in the Peninsula, Mountain View, Redwood City, Los Altos, that kind of stuff. And so back in that area, lots of kids from high school were like, video games is cool, but there's no job in that. And so one of my close friends went into this company, PF Magic, and was working there. I went to high school, then I was going to this, doing kind of QA work at this company on my summers. And then eventually I decided to go to USC down in Los Angeles. I was going to be a pre-med student, do sports medicine, go that whole direction. And the video game world was just calling me. So every summer while I was at USC studying pre-med, I would go and work with these guys and do QA and do production work. And I just love video games. So much to my parents' horror, I decided that rather than taking the MCAT and going to medical school, I'd take a shot at video games. And they said, if that doesn't work, you're going to end up going to medical school. And I was like, okay, God, I hope it works, because medical school sounded terrible. But it ended up working out. So I joined PF Magic. And if you guys don't know the history, PF Magic is an engineering term that stands for, and you guys can edit this out, but pure fucking magic is what PF stands for. And
Just a second. We need to edit that in for sure. That needs to be in the pod.
keep it. And it's funny because it was like a fully incorporated company with all that stuff. And you can go look at it. It's pf.magic with a little clown on like a CD-ROM. But it was when the engineers back in like the 80s used to say, how does something work? And I don't know. It's pure fucking magic. So that's where that name came from. And that company did reasonably well, exited to, God, I don't know, SSI or somebody. Forget. I left before they exited. Then I bopped around a little bit, did some consulting work, and then ended up at Mattel doing kind of when Mattel was doing a video game company, a video game division within Mattel. Did some work there, helped build the boys group there, did games like Hot Wheels Stunt Track Driver and Caterpillar Construction Zone and some stuff back in the day. So for those of you who were young kids who played Hot Wheels Stunt Track Driver on CD-ROM, that was part of my work. And then they kind of imploded and they bought this company called TLC, and it all kind of went sideways. And then they asked me, well, we can't really, because they were divesting from the video game business, we can't really do CD-ROMs anymore, but we can do mobile interactive productions and, web. And I said, ooh, mobile sounds cool. So I started to do mobile at Mattel and realized, just got the bug for mobile, that this is the future. I'm super excited about mobile. I'm all in. And ended up leaving Mattel and joining a company called Jamdat. And it's where the story gets a little more relevant and interesting. Sorry for the long wind up, but joined Jamdat as one of the early employees. We were a pure play mobile publisher. This is like 2000, so really early mobile. And that's where I learned a lot of kind of the early fundamentals of mobile gaming and what works and what doesn't, and kind of the early part of the business. We were pre-IPO, so we went public in 2004, and then we sold to Electronic Arts in 2006. And when we sold to EA, we were like the dominant mobile player kind of on earth at that time. Which is pretty wild. And our competitors were like Glue Mobile and Gameloft. It's still pretty early. Then I was head of studios and production for EA Mobile through that acquisition, and then for the next like 6 years. And that was a really fun time. That's when we sort of, the business really started to scale. The iPhone launched, App Store launched. And one of the most, I think, fun, if you guys want to get into stories later, that's when Apple was really kind of launching the iPhone, launching the app stores, lots of really quick innovation. And I was like fortunate to be there at that time, got to be on stage like 4 or 5 times with Steve Jobs. You can look it up on the internet. I'm the guy holding the iPad and with Need for Speed on it. That was a really fun time. And we had some big hits. Me and a couple guys were the ones behind Simpsons Tapped Out, which was one of the biggest mobile games that our division had made up until that point. I think it's only been eclipsed by one other game since then, but huge game. Had a little bit of a rough launch, but a huge game. And then the rise of Zynga was happening kind of in 2010, 2011. And that was really kind of a new way to make games. It was really just after free-to-play launched. It was using data and analytics. It was all about, kind of the product management discipline and how that works with creative. And they were just killing it. And I'd been at the kind of Jamdat EA mobile thing for like 11 years. And I just wanted to do something different. I wanted to learn. So lots of great times at EA. Miss a lot of that company, what it did. But I was excited to try something new. So I jumped ship and I joined Zynga as the SVP of mobile there. And we started really early before, again, pre-IPO for Zynga. But before they really had done much at all in mobile. And sort of brought a lot of the mobile discipline to Zynga, and also was learning a lot from the Zynga kind of data analytics, product management culture that was being created there at that time, and sort of tried to marry those two together, and worked with a lot of really smart, talented folks back in those days. But yeah, we had the #1 mobile game in the world with Zynga Poker was top grossing #1. We later acquired Words with Friends, the new toy guys out of McKinney, Texas. They were awesome, and that was Words with Friends, which also became a huge franchise. And was at Zynga for a while, and then Facebook turned off the install flows to the website of the business, which kind of imploded the website of the business. But the mobile side, our side, was continuing to grow and doing very well. But it really sent the company kind of sideways. And to be honest, I've been doing the grind for a lot of years and hadn't much of a social life, was traveling a lot. So after my time at Zynga, I decided to take a little time for reflection. Met my now wife and stared at the sun on the beach for a period of time and really contemplated what I wanted to do next. And that kind of got me excited about mobile again. And I just love the mobile game space. And so decided to go found Carbonated. Never started a company before. And I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. So rather than raising capital and just going full into it, I thought maybe I'll do some work for hire first, learn what it's like to be an entrepreneur, starting a company from literally zero from my office, which I'm in right now, same place. I thought, I'm going to take it slow. I want to make sure I do this right. And so we did some work for hire work from Glue Mobile. And then we raised capital from Bitcraft and Golden Ventures, and then very quickly a follow-on sort of plus round from Andreessen Horowitz, the A16Z guys, and some pro rata from the rest of the folks on our cap table. And then we did our A round in 20. We actually raised it in, I think, mid 2023. We announced it in 2024 just because we don't always announce those things at the same time. And then we've been kind of heads down building some really cool stuff ever since. That's kind of a long rambling arc, but at least that gives you the whole arc of the company and where I've been from and where I am now, and we can talk a little bit later about the game. But I figured that's a way long intro, but you did say long form, so there you go. And now I'll shut up and maybe we can turn over to the other guys.
That's this kind of story that we're looking for here. So let's go back, and I want to mine that story for golden nuggets. For those who are audio only, I'm doing the mining, two hands mine. Okay, so I think probably one of the two critical things there that I want to dig into are, one, early in mobile, what did that feel like? Because I think right now at Web3, we all feel like we're on the precipice of the new era of gaming. What are the parallels between that? Do we see similar inflection points? What are kind of the signals of, yes, we are on the precipice of a new era of gaming versus, no, we're just blowing smoke?
That's a great question. I think, and I think as I've gotten older, I continue to watch smart people in the world and watch how they think. And I think, like a lot of people, I'm sure to get a lot of the audience eye rolls out there, but I'm a big follower of Elon Musk. And I got to be close to Steve Jobs during the Apple era because of the stuff we were doing back then. But I think one of the interesting things about both of them in different ways, but particularly how Elon Musk thinks, is sort of that first principles up mentality and sort of believing in the future state and not getting too lost in the noise in the interim. And so if you take that sort of logical way of thinking, the sort of the physics ground up first principles way of thinking, that's a little bit of how it was in the early mobile days, at least for me. And I'll tell you two kind of interesting stories. The first was when I was at Mattel. I was a young guy, hardcore gamer in the games industry. And I was definitely one of those guys who had a little house in Hermosa Beach, and we'd all, play LAN games, and we're drilling holes in the wall and running Ethernet cables through all the computers, and we're playing, I don't know, Tribes. We were mostly Tribes players. We put a lot of Tribes. If you guys don't know Tribes 2, great game. And of course, all the traditional games that everyone plays, but we were really kind of a Tribes crew. So we played a lot of Tribes, and but what was funny is living by the beach down in LA and being a young single guy, I had this struggle between I'm in this dark basement all the time, this dark room. Yeah, I'm having a great time with my friends, but it's sunny and beautiful, and there's young single ladies running around, and I was a single guy, and I was like, what am I doing in this basement? Yeah, my friends were great and everything, but we're all smelly, neckbeard, hadn't showered in 2 days, pizza laying all over the house, guys hungover, drunk, sleeping on couches. And that's awesome. I love that. But I also wanted to go outside. And so one of the things that was kind of, because I was at Mattel at the time, we were looking at the mobile stuff, and you had Game Boy Black and White and Game Boy Colors, and they were great to play in the sun. You could take them to the beach, and in direct sunlight, you could play play Tetris and these kind of simple games. And I just sort of had this epiphany. I thought to myself, man, if this ever gets on mobile phones, because mobile phones were still popular, but relatively new even back then. You're talking like 1999. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be great to be able to sit on the beach with your friends, watch people play volleyball, out in the sun, not stuck in your downstairs basement? Wouldn't it be cool to play games on a phone like you can on a Game Boy Black and White or Game Boy Color? And shortly thereafter, I met the guys from Qualcomm. And Qualcomm was basically building an operating system called Brew, Binary Runtime Environment for Wireless. I think that's what Brew stands for. Might got that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, and their perspective was we want to make like the Windows of mobile phones, an operating system. Because remember, this is way before, really the domination of Android and iOS. You're talking probably 5-6 years before that. And they were like, we want to make a cool operating system. And that was like oh my God, if they can do this, if they can put an operating system on phones, you'll be able to download and play games just like Tetris at the beach. And what a great experience. I'll be able to play in my downstairs basement with my buddies, and I'll be able to go out on the beach and play these games out there. And so I just started to think about the fundamentals of that, right? The kind of first principles of like, do people want to play games outside of their basement? Yes. Do people like cell phones? Yes. If these two things cross over, how big might this market be? And of course, I vastly underestimated how big it would eventually become. But I was like, it's going to be big enough that it would support a proper business, and I could enjoy my life by playing mobile games in the sun out of my basement, right? And so that was kind of the first thing. And then as Brew launched, Qualcomm launched it, and then J2ME came, Java, and the platform started to kind of grow. I just really believed in that conviction of this is ultimately where it's going to go. I think the thing that kept me going, there was a period of time uh, when Jamdat had already IPO'd and had sort of, we'd sort of done very well, and we had sold to Electronic Arts. Part of the decision of selling to EA was there was no obvious growth steps in front of us, right? At that time, the Motorola Razr was like the best phone. And there was this sort of like, well, what's next? There was nothing obvious. And a lot of the smart executives at the time were like, well, there's nothing obvious. We're going to get out while the getting's good, kind of cash out. No knocking them. Smart thing to do. Probably the smartest thing to do. But I was a bit of a zealot. I'm like, I don't know what's next, but this isn't the end. There's going to be more cool stuff coming. The Trios and all the Windows CE devices, they'd all come and failed. And I mean, failed. They were sort of struggling. BlackBerry and the Razrs had sort of dominated at that time. And I didn't know what was coming, but I just believed it's going to be something. Technology continues to move forward. There's too much money and power here. It's well subsidized by the carriers. Something's going to show up one day. And so I stayed. And lo and behold, that's when the iPhone came. And it was just like, like the rays of God coming down, and hallelujah. It was pretty wild to see that kind of happen. So how does that tie to kind of crypto in these days? I think it's that same thing of future state. I think it's, do you believe that player ownership matters? Do you believe that moving the financial power away from the kind of the central groups into the hands of people matters? Are those fundamental principles that matter in the long term? And I think the answer is yes. And so now we're in that place of a bit of the wandering, right? Like trying to find your way through till you get to that kind of end state. And I think looking at those sort of first principles fundamentals is like, do you believe in these basic principles? And if you do, you're going to ping pong around. You're going to have ups and downs. I think it's true of investing in stock or investing in these sectors. Like I invested a lot in mobile sectors because I believed in the ultimate future. I didn't know what it was going to be necessarily, but I believed in those first principles and that one day that would be true. People are going to play lots of games on phones. It's just going to be a thing that's going to happen in the future. And so I invested in those companies. And when the stocks were up and down and all over the place, you just sort of close your eyes and you go, it's going to get there eventually. I'll hold until then. Hodl. And I think that's true of crypto in the Web3 space. I think we all believe in the fundamentals in the future. And so you've got the up and downs in the future, and you just got to kind of, survive those bumps. The one other thing that I'll say is naysayers are a real thing. When I was doing mobile games, You know, this you're talking like black and white and WAP, like web browsers on phones. It would take like seconds to load. You know, my friends were playing, you know, working on World of Warcraft and, you know, all these cool games. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, that's garbage. Like, that stuff is just terrible. Like black and white web browsers that take 3 seconds to load a turn. What are you doing, man? And I was like, it's the future. It's going to be the future. It's going to be the future. You know, everyone wants to do this. Is where the people are. And it was years and years and years of naysaying. That was also true in free to play. When free to play showed up, everybody hated free to play. I'll tell you a story about Scrabble and Words with Friends. So we were doing, this is free to play related to kind of how this feels similar to Web3. When free to play showed up, we were working with Scrabble at the time. We were at EA and we had the Scrabble license through Hasbro, and it was a paid game. It was paid Scrabble. You know, it was like whatever, $4.99 or something. And we were going to them and saying, this is before Words with Friends launch, and we were going to them and we were saying, hey, everything's going free to play. That's what customers want. You got to go free or somebody's going to eat your lunch. There was a web game called Scrabulous that had gone out and had sort of built a huge audience, kind of very early Zynga style. Like, it had this huge audience. It was built by these two brothers in India. And it was a really good data point of like, look, like this stuff's going free. People want to play these games for free. They don't want to pay up front. And Scrabble or Hasbro was like, look, that's devaluing our brand. That was their kind of big thing. They were saying, you can't devalue our brand by making it free. We're not going to let you do this. Can't do it. And we were like, dude, we got to do this. You're going to get eaten alive. Like, look what's happened with Scrabulous. It's going to happen on mobile. It's going to go. And they're like, no, 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 no. And then very shortly after that, boom, out comes Words with Friends. Words with Friends was a better game in some ways, for sure. But its big defining thing was it was free, right? Scrabble was $4.99 and it was free. And as a free social game, you know, it sort of exploded. But we got so much resistance from licensors and everyone else who were saying, no, no, no to free to play. You're going to devalue our brand. It feels cheap and, you know, you're penny pinching, you're doing it for free, and then you're monetizing all these, you're spamming it with ads, gross, gross, gross. There's a lot of downward pressure on free to play. And, you know, we tried to fight through it where we could. We believed in it deeply also because the customers were telling us that free to play beats paid. And ultimately, you know, Words with Friends won and crushed it primarily because it was free. That's true of what happened with League of Legends. That's true of what happened with Fortnite. All, again, free versions of a paid competitor, the proof of point in the market. Anyway, so you know, same thing with free to play. Lots of hate, and free to play is kind of almost more similar to Web3 than the emergence of mobile, because mobile was sort of platform oriented, hardware oriented. This one's sort of business model oriented, free to play. And I think that similar to Web3 in that sense, it's a bit of a business model move, and same kind of hate, same kind of, you know, this is spammy, this is scummy, this devalues our brand, we don't want to touch it. But ultimately it's where the customers are going. So I think it's more similar to free to play in that way, but that kind of hate is not surprising. You just got to believe in your first principles and kind of power through it.
Just one last question for me, and then I'm going to stop hogging the question mic here. But on the idea of, we have these principles of player ownership and things of that nature that make Web3 a good idea and make, you know, blockchain and crypto a good idea for gaming. Why? Why is that? Why do you think that's important? Having seen the rise of all these different hardware stuff, the business model stuff, multiple different companies, pre-IPO, post-IPO. Why does that matter? Obviously, this is coming from a supreme crypto gaming bull, but I'm just curious as to, you know, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, Josh, do you want to throw? I'll let him go a little bit because I'm sort of hogging the mic for the last like bit, but I'm happy to answer it too. But why don't we have Josh throw in so we get a little bit of more voices in here?
Yeah, thank you. So first off, I think there is a shift in the business model, and I think that's key to Web3. I think what has me signaling that like Web3 is moving in the right direction is I saw a tweet from Antonio Garcia Martinez the other week, who runs a company called Spindle, and they do advertising measurement to be able to track campaigns and calculate return on ad spend. And he said his customers are now complaining about marketing performance, which means the infrastructure is there, which means applications are coming. And so what that basically tells me is that we've had a new unlock moment to actually realize these things. And so what I'm most excited about Web3 is it's really kind of changing how compute is interacting for gaming and other industries, right? So it's like, there's this eye in the sky computing type system, right? And historically, hardware has informed software, and now we're in a place where software is informing hardware, which means the moment that software is informing hardware, you're actually giving more accessibility to the users to have the experience that they want because they can customize it. They could tailor it to their needs. They could create systems that allow them to have the most fun, and not be constrained by the limitations of a console or some hardware system. So it really kind of like creates this new mechanism to be able to enjoy entertainment and enjoy media. And I think that's what I'm most excited about. And the fact that the infrastructure has been coming into play, cost structures have been coming down, L1s and L2 scalings is actually coming into fruition. Stable coins have like real product market fit, right? And so now all of a sudden you have payment rails and the ability to actually interact on these things. You have account abstraction so that you can actually, hop into a game and just go straight into the experience. Super, super amazing. Akin to what was happening in the early mobile days, right? There was like Facebook Instaplay, and now you have like Instaplay things on Farcaster with frames, or you have Instaplay with games on Telegram. And so we're actually starting to see that history is starting to rhyme. And it's really all kind of coming to a head. And I'm anticipating that like in the next like 1 to 3 years, we're going to really start having a reinvention of the business model. And there's going to be huge excitement. And all the naysayers are going to go to, why didn't I do this 3 years ago? Now. So that's what I'm super excited about, because like the text there, the social signals there, and the new way to kind of have this illustration of software informing hardware is what's exciting me the most about the why now question on Web3 gaming.
Well, I think one of the big advantages that like Web3 gaming has is it has this sort of like emotional resonance where you have these real world assets, or not these, or these digital assets with real value that sort of bring an emotional connection to the game. I think one of the other things that you guys are doing interesting that we got a chance to talk about on the AMA is you're also making emotional resonance for y'all's game based on your geographic location. So I'd love to get into that a little bit because I think it's a really interesting aspect of what you guys are building at MadWorld.
Yeah, I'll jump on that one a little bit. Yeah, I think we haven't talked today a little bit about like kind of the history of why the land, but I'll jump a little bit first into kind of how we're thinking about it, and if we want to go back to the history of how we did and all that, that's totally something that might be fun to do. Yeah, I mean, look, when we talk about ownership and the ability to use these assets across multiple games, I think that often gets overplayed, I think, by some studios where it's like, oh, this as like my dragon sword will be used in Call of Duty. It's like, not really. It's not that that can't happen. I just think it's not necessarily what people are coming for. You come to a game to get entertained. Sometimes those things can carry across, sometimes they can't. I think where things can carry across, obviously currency can carry across, because currency is kind of generic, and so it is something. And obviously we have that proof point in the world today. Use your dollars all over the place, and other countries use the American dollar as well. So currency does translate pretty quickly across games and game genres, I think, relatively easily. There are other things that can, if they make sense. Obviously characters and skins and that kind of stuff can carry across, because it's kind of generic enough that it can move across some genres, right? Weapons can, if they're similar. Like you can't take a machine gun from Call of Duty and bring it to World of Warcraft. That makes no sense. But you could potentially between Call of Duty and PUBG or something, right? So there are some places where it makes sense and a lot of places where it doesn't. I think for us, one of the things that we believe in is that who you are as a person has a lot to do with your tribe, right? Where you were born, the language you speak, the place you grew up, the people around you, your neighborhoods. You're very, very well influenced by your tribe, the people around you. And that's, I want to say, back to like first principles. That's kind of one of Carbonated's first principles, is we sort of identified, or we believe that land and where you're from is one of these things that can carry across multiple games, a bit like currency can. And again, we're not saying it's going to solve everything. It's not like we're going to take our real world land and all of a sudden we're going to do a space game and you're going to be like, oh, I'm taking, Tampa, Florida into, or the Orion's Belt or something. Like, we're not saying that. But we're saying, but for a class of games, a certain bunch of games, that does translate. And so you might imagine that the games that we're making now and the games we're going to make in the future are real world based. They are location based. But I want to be careful about location-based because we don't actually care where you are at any point in time. We're not a location-based game, meaning we're not sort of saying, like, oh, your GPS coordinates are this, therefore you're in this neighborhood. We're not doing the Pokemon Go stuff. Like, that's a great game. That's not what we're doing. All we're saying is people tend to care and resonate deeply with their tribe. The way that you think about your local sports team, or the way that you think about the Olympics, right? The Olympics comes every 4 years. You kind of, or 2 to 4 years, depending if you're into the summer or winter Olympics. But anyway, when the Olympics shows up, you tend to root for your country, where you're from, your tribe. When you play your local sports team, if you're Manchester United, you're probably going to be, caring about Manchester, probably from the UK at least. That is a very true thing that we believe. Your high school sports team, your college sports team, your pro sports teams, look at all the pro teams out there, all that entire business sits around this idea of tribalism. And I think in video games, it's been hard to do. And there's a couple reasons why it's hard to do, primarily because the content and the ability to make a global system that handles content for everybody all over the world at the same time is nearly impossible to do. But with the rise of kind of AI and LLMs and all this stuff, we've come up with some clever solutions, which has enabled us to do that. But long story short, we really believe that this kind of tribalism around land and where you are is a really powerful emotional tool that gets people excited about playing a game and then retaining in a game, right? One, you want to come play the game because you're like, oh, dude, like I'm from Tokyo and this game's got people fighting for Tokyo. I want to defend Tokyo. I want to come and play that game. So from an appeal and install perspective, we think that matters. People are going to come because they're going to hear, hey, people are fighting for my town. I want to go play for my town. And then from a kind of retention, come back to the game perspective, when people are fighting or somebody's attacking or invading, or they're like, hey, you got to defend your town, you can do that. We also believe that if you play this game a lot and you invest in your land and your tribe and your location, that the value that you sink into that land can be taken from one game to another. And that's how we bring it all the way back to the Web3 part, where it's like that ownership or that transfer of value really matters. For us, it's primarily around the land. Even though I have these cool characters that you can play in the game and all that kind of stuff, we'll do some of that as well. But the really fundamental principle is the stuff around land. And so you hear it in the name of the game. Our game is called MadWorld. The world part of the name is the part that we talk about land. And it's a dystopian present game. What we mean by dystopian present is dystopian. You guys all know what that means. The world fell apart. Things happen. Cool story there. Cool story, bro. Cool story there. But then the why it fell apart and this present day thing, we hopefully we're differentiating from a lot of the games out there. Many of the dystopian games are far in the future. They're like 60 years in the future. The New York is overgrown by weeds and there's deer prancing around Central Park, or whatever. We wanted to make it way more current. So in our story, there's a collapse that happens. It happens essentially now, like today. What is today? December 13th? Happens now. 2024, the collapse happens now. You play the game 6 months after the collapse. So you're essentially joining and playing the game, I don't know, May of next year, May of 2025. That's sort of, it's always 6 months after now-ish. And the reason we wanted to do that is because we wanted it to be relatable to the audience. So, you never, in the future, you don't know what happens with, sorry to be a little dark here, but like the war in Ukraine or what's going on in the Middle East or whatever, right? But what we can do is if it's current, we can say, hey, like, here's the current state of the world today, and we're going to dystopify it, and that's how you play it. As an example, you might see things that look like Cybertrucks in our game, right? Why? Because that's currently relevant to players. They can see it and it grounds them in, oh, this is now, like, this is my neighborhood. And that's the thing that we're going after. It's not, if it's too far in the future, you're like, I don't know, my neighborhood's gone anyway. Who cares? Like, it's not me anymore. It's not my family. It's not my friends. It's not my town. If it's 70 years in the future. But if it's a couple of months from now, you can all of a sudden relate to it. You can say, well, if it's a couple of months from now, yeah, my people would still be here. Like my neighbors would be here. We should fight for this town. I'm going to go tell my neighbor you should play this game. It's cool, right? Like we should fight for our neighborhood because it's right now. If it was 100 years in the future and there's zombies running around, you're like, I don't really, it's not my neighborhood. It's some zombie neighborhood. Who cares? Who cares what happens? Aliens have come and there's an EMP. I don't really care. But in MadWorld, the idea is it's your neighborhood, it's now. So you care because it's like, it's real. And we do some clever stuff about keeping the content relevant through these big kind of AI systems that are powering everything to keep it current.
Now a word from our sponsors.
What's up, crypto gamers? Shout out to our sponsor, Myria. Myria is revolutionizing Ethereum-based gaming with its powerful L2 scaling solution. Think zero gas fees, instant transactions, free NFT minting, and more. Myria offers a suite of tools that are tailor-built for game development, including game-specific SDKs, a spec'd-out marketplace, Web3 spiked leaderboards, new AI super tools, and more. All this fueled by a fleet of player-run nodes that are a breeze to operate and pump out daily rewards for supporting the ecosystem. Plus, check out Meta Rush, the Battle Royale obstacle runner by Myria Studios, dropping very, very soon.
Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
As far as the timeline of the game goes, is the companion app, if the game starts 6 months after this event happens, is the companion app closer to today, so to speak? How does that sort of like fit in? Because I know that'll be, sort of the Neo Tokyo community and the greater community's like first chance to like dive into the MadWorld universe.
Yeah, I'm happy to address that one. So we really kind of built our ecosystem around the narrative and the collapse and kind of going into the present day dystopian view. So the companion app really is the moments of the collapse, right? So the idea is to coordinate with your tribe, be social, make sure that you kind of like align your interests with your tribe so that you guys have the best chance to get through the collapse on the other side unscathed. And so it's really what's happening immediately within the collapse and then kind of building through that narrative, right? And so we're kind of taking our community and our players through the entire journey so that they understand what it feels like and to kind of start with your tribe and carry through this whole journey, right? So I think often you kind of get put into a game and you get the what happened and now you go play. You're actually part of that what happened moment, which I think is a really, really interesting, novel way to kind of like create a storyline around an entire ecosystem and carry that through multiple different platforms so we can actually show how land assets interact between different titles within our ecosystem. And I think it's a really, really cool approach. And I'm super, super excited about that.
And one quick follow. I was just going to say one quick follow-up on that is the way that, the companion app goes live, you're playing through this event. Are you shaping the event or are you sort of playing through a set story, so to speak? Like what happens with these different locations in the companion app? Will that affect how sort of the story starts 6 months from now? Or are they playing through, a scripted sort of event?
Yeah, so right now it's actually unscripted. So it is community led, and the outcome of it is kind of dictating the next steps going into the main mobile game. So everything is socially coordinated. Who your tribe is, which countries kind of stand the test of time, who survived the collapse and do so, with the right resources and all that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of carried through. So we're really community and player forward. In that sense, where it's really kind of we are creating the scaffolding, and then the community is actually building the rest of the house.
Yeah, and there's one part on that too. Is it's video games these days have there's a lot of types of players that play video games. I don't know if you guys have sort of heard of this rant before from other game makers, but it's kind of like you have I don't have them in front of me. Josh probably remembers some of them better than I do, but we have progression Paul and fighter Fred and social Sally or whatever, right? So we have these kind of player types. And we know that there's different types of people who want to play these games in different ways. Sort of an example, I'll use a big game like World of Warcraft, right? There's different types of people who play World of Warcraft. You could be a crafter in World of Warcraft. You can go around and mine rocks all day and craft stuff and sell that stuff in the store. And you can level up and you can progress your character and you can do all that stuff just through crafting, right? You could be a fighter. You could be I want to go and just be the guy in the front who's the meat shield and fights everybody. You could be the healer in the back, and you could be I'm just going to be the healer and kind of heal. You could be kind of the social ringleader chair who's rallying the group to go do these raids or whatever. And so World of Warcraft has lots of ways of playing that game. So do many games. So in our game, we have something kind of similar. We have like our fighter class, the shooter folks who come in and play it as a third-person shooter. Why do we do that? Because we think there's a lot of folks who are perfectly suited to join the Web3 world who haven't been exposed to it, we think, in the right way. And that's, young men who love tech, who love playing mobile games, who maybe have heard of crypto, haven't really played games in it though. They're much more of the coin-based kind of investor types, less the people who take that money and play it in a game. And we think we know a lot of them play third-person shooters because we know that audience. So part of our game, also because it's frankly cool to do, it's fun to play a shooter, let's be honest. So part of it's really just, it's cool. But we know that a lot of people are going to flow in through kind of the shooter. And so we have the kind of those shooter players. There's a lot of people who don't like shooters, right? They don't like playing shooters on their phone. They don't like the controls, but they want to be part of this world and they want to kind of invest and be part of the clan who's attacking. And so we have a system of gameplay we call squad operations, where you can come into this game and you don't even have to play the shooter at all. You can play as kind of like do the missions, collect squad mates, put those squad mates off on missions, generate currency, help your clans win wars, do all that kind of stuff. We have sort of the social Sally person, probably not Sally because it's mostly dudes who play our game, but social Sam, we'll call them. But then you have people who can come in and they can kind of coordinate the clan and help people donate and say, we gotta declare war. Like if there's a social Sam in, I don't know why I'm saying Sam for my example in South Korea, but let's go South Korea. Let's say you're like in Busan and Seoul and you've got a big clan there, you're holding South Korea and you're being attacked by players coming in from China and North Korea. Not many North Koreans are going to play, let's be honest. So it's going to be Chinese guys who come down because North Korea doesn't have good cell phone coverage, we'll just say. But you're going to have like Chinese players coming down through North Korea and attacking the Korean guys. And then you're going to have Japanese players jumping across the ocean and kind of attacking the Busan side. And so those players will be like, okay, who do we attack first? How do we defend ourselves? Where should we put our time, our money, and our play to defend the North or the South? Or what do we do? Right. So there's going to be social people who are like kind of coordinating. They don't even have to play the game at all if they don't want to. And then you're going to have kind of your progression people who want to level up, and you're going to have spenders, people who are financially oriented, who are clever at knowing where to invest, how to spend money. And so the Telegram game is primarily suited for some of the spender types, for some people who love the financial manipulation, for some of the people that are social, right? We're kind of going after the social Sams for the Telegram game. Obviously, it's in Telegram, it's social. They're going to have lots of friends. They're going to help coordinate these things. And then the progression people, right? Because we think the progression people are going to want to progress. They're going to want to get the rewards from playing the Telegram game. They're going to want to be early access to the monuments. They want to have early access to owning and controlling land. And so the reason why the games are designed the way they are is they bridge. So if you're playing the Telegram game and you're playing for South Korea and you're doing financial manipulation in South Korea and you want your group to win on that bonding curve and take South Korea, that group will get benefits in MadWorld for South Korea. And so that's how we connect the two, because we think that and we don't want to get too much into the story, but the collapse happens. There's a bunch of stuff we're going to tease in the Telegram game and how the collapse happens. And then you can bridge into the main game. And both will be running eventually at the same time, probably. So you can sort of play the prequel. You can still bring the rewards over and then play in the main game. But that's how we sort of connect them to is by player type. But obviously the fighter shooter guys aren't going to have much to do in the Telegram game because the big high-end 3D stuff won't happen until the live mobile game. But we are going to give the people that are excited about the financial side, the investment side, the social side, and the progression side something really cool to do that takes that time and bridges it into the main game. Anyway, a little bit of a side rant, but
yeah, and I wondered if you wanted to kind of go through, is there an incentive for someone to play both the Telegram game and then MadWorld and sort of, bring them in and have them, be in the entire ecosystem? And what are the advantages to having, hey, I've done this, I've done that. I wanted you to talk about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to tackle that one. Each country has its own smart contract, and you're buying along what's called a bonding curve, which means at the start, when no one's bought it, it's super cheap. As more people come in, the price can increase. And then if there's any returns, it does a little bit of a reduction in price. But essentially, it's just for any action, there's a change in price. And so as you acquire tokens, you're also getting ecosystem rewards back into our system, which flow directly into the game. And it's all connected through a portal system that we have that allows you to interact with your land assets. And the more of those assets that you work towards within the companion app, it also gives you the opportunity to have more assets that kind of interact between the companion app as well as the main game. Travis did touch on these monuments, which are a land asset that allows you to interact on plots of land between games. And they're super, super cool. They have different rarity, so scarce through common. They have different levels of functionality, and they are the item that is going to be one of the chase items to kind of get through the companion app that's going to carry you into the main mobile app. And then just thinking a little bit forward, because this is underpinned by an on-chain live operations platform. And what I mean by live operations is how you manage your game day to day to manage characters, progression, events, and anything that you need to do to operate a game on a daily basis. It's underpinned by our system called Carbine, and Carbine is an on-chain live ops platform. And there are ecosystem rewards that will be underpinning that entire system. And so it's really well. So from a narrative standpoint, we've tied everything together. From a Web3 and blockchain standpoint, we also have all of our systems interconnecting with each other. So you can deploy, different land assets. You could deploy different character progressions. You can deploy different event systems, and you can create actual entire like thrillers, not just isolated games within our system. So yes, the companion app gives you an advantage to the later stages, right? And so from a roadmap standpoint, it's companion app, then it's our monument collection, then it's into the open beta of our main game, which is in February, and then that'll lead into the release of the on-chain live ops platform.
Yeah, from the previous. Oh,
That's
sorry,
exciting.
Jay.
Go ahead, Nick. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just from Travis's previous comment on like South Korea, I now have this like mental story playing in my head that like Kim Jong-un's gonna hear this and be like, I need to have a bunch of bots play for North Korea so that we can actually take over this area and be able to like resonate. So I think it'll be interesting to see, that just speaks to like the tribalism. I think the Olympics are a great example, but even as like particularly in the States, like as young as elementary school kids, you get divided up into different colors and you have field day. And like you went from, not having any emotional attachment to red team to being like, I will die for red team in this capture the flag. So I think you guys are really, sort of keying into some great like human psychology that I think people will get off and really like run with.
One of the features that I'm most excited about in the companion app is I've been following, Must Stop Murad, right? And he's like on the meme coin super cycle thing right now. But in essence, like meme coins are really just the tokenization of internet moments. And in our game, you could actually, through an on-chain mechanism, create your own attack system. So like if you want to like just make your own meme attack, you could say like Elon's like political interference, and actually have that as an attack system within the game. So like we're super excited about that because it's an opportunity, as you said, to just kind of create novel experiences and do it through this whole system. And so like that's the one thing that I'm like super excited about. It's like the community can actually fuel the memes within our game, and that's super super exciting.
Yeah, it's something that certainly hasn't been explored that I've seen in like games be able to capture like outside of like clippable moments or like sort of like social media shareable moments, which, Helldivers obviously did a really good job with, but no one's really figured out how to crack that code of bringing these virality meme-like moments into a game. And obviously we've seen how powerful they can be in financial markets.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think you're so right. I hope people sort of resonate that feeling of like the tribalism, or you're right, like that South Korea thing where it's like, oh shit, like Kim Jong Un and the Chinese are going to come down from the south. Like if you're watching what's going on in South Korea in the news right now with like president declaring martial law and all that kind of stuff, that's what the vision has always been, right? Which is the world is always interesting somewhere at some point always. There's always something going on, whether it's like what's going on in South Korea, whether it's going on. And look, we don't want to be ambulance chasers. We're not going to chase the bad stuff necessarily, but there's always interesting stuff happening in the world all the time. And we think that that's exciting both for the rest of the world to sort of watch in a distance or potentially take part in. And that's one of the reasons, remember I mentioned before, we're not location based. So if you want to like leave your clan that's in New York and you want to join the South Korea clan, you want to like join that fight, you can. You know, those guys may have a little bit of a home court advantage, but so you may see clans swelling and shrinking. You may see spend and investment move to different parts of the world as things happen, because we think that that's how the world works. There's sort of interesting moments where things shift. When we were first designing the game, it was way back when we were ideating on it before we had really even, I think, raised capital. It's when the snowpocalypse happened in New York, and everyone was like, oh, snowpocalypse, all that kind of stuff. And we're like, oh, that'd be a great East Coast event. You could run like snowpocalypse, right? And you could be like, give rewards for, you know, you could have different class of characters. If you've got the heavy, you know, heavy's over there. My camera's inverted. That guy. But you could be like, you know, you could outfit him in something and be like, he's really good in the snowpocalypse. You know, he gets +5 health and his, you know, or you know, we have a flamethrower guy in our game. The flamethrower guy becomes really expensive because everybody wants him, but he's really effective in combat during the snowpocalypse event, right? Like we can do stuff like that relatively easily. Oh, one thing actually, you know what? Here, I'm going to run a couple quick images behind me just for the help. I think it'll help kind of illustrate some of this stuff. Yeah. So, you know, visuals of the game. When we talk about it being a third-person shooter, you can sort of see kind of some of the visuals here. So when we're talking about you play as a third-person shooter, that's sort of like kind of what it looks like. Because I know for the audience are probably like, what is he talking about? Like this game like, what does it look like? I can't visualize it, right? So the third person shooter sort of looks like this. So it's a real-time third person shooter. You're doing missions, you're attacking enemies, you know, you've got your AI driven squad mates who can kind of come with you, you know, all this kind of good stuff. And then the territory control stuff looks basically something like this. So it's one giant world, one massive world. It's asynchronous in the sense that as the server gets updates from clans winning wars or taking territory or whatever, it updates. It's one big world. Everyone's playing for the same map, but it's asynchronous, not real time. But it's pretty fast asynchronous, meaning like if something updates, we just update it. We push you an update. But you can see behind me the hexes. We've populated the entire planet Earth with these things. You know, the blue clan is representative of your clan, so you're the blue clan in this visual. Like, okay, so I'm fighting you. This blue clan right here, they control Tokyo. That's their clan icon. They're going up against those other clans around them. Those clans all have a bunch of players. They're declaring war on each other. And not only can you control the land that's all there in blue, but you can own the underlying plots. And that's all, of course, on the blockchain. Those underlying plots have benefits that flow up and down through the control layer. So, for example, let's say you're not part of that blue clan, but you own Tokyo. You've just spent a bunch of money. You want to own Tokyo. You want the rewards of owning Tokyo. You can be kind of the land holder, the land owner of Tokyo. The clan can move around on top, take control, lose control, take control, lose control. But the person who owns Tokyo gets kind of the benefits irrespective of which clan happens to have control at that moment. So it's kind of a two-layered system. There's the ownership layer on the bottom. You can own these plots, and you can also control them by being a big clan that can fight for that. You may think, well, what's the benefit of owning these plots, or what's the benefit of controlling them? So owning the plots, obviously you can invest in making them more powerful, more defensible, more rare. And if you invest as a landowner in making those plots more powerful and more valuable, then they have more video game in-game power. So if the landowner upgrades Tokyo, and then the clan who controls it is like, oh shit, we don't want to lose Tokyo because it's giving us a bunch of currency. It's giving us a bunch of stuff to craft weapons with. It's super defensible. It's really hard to take if it's upgraded and turned on. So then the clan wants to control it because it's valuable to them from an economy and a gameplay standpoint. So they want to control as much land as they can. And then the owners underneath are getting benefits, and it's kind of passive for them. So they don't even have to play the third-person shooter. They don't even have to play the territory control game. They can just be an ownership person. They can be like, I want to own a bunch of land. I want to improve it all. And I want to kind of watch people play on top of the land that I own and control. So hopefully the visuals help a little bit because it is a mobile game. It is on a phone. I know a lot of people are thinking in their mind, they're imagining something like a World of Warcraft. I mean, it's still high fidelity, real-time 3D. We're pushing the limits of what the phones can do. The map is a global, all of planet Earth. You can cruise around. By the way, the stuff I'm showing you behind here, this is all Japan. If you're a Japanese player, when you click on these hexes and you read the backstories and you see it all, it's all in Japanese. It's also done in English. So because we have to read English because I don't speak every language, in case you guys are wondering. I only speak one language well, which is English. But we use these big AI LLMs to do this for the whole of the world. So if you go to India or you go to Germany, it'll all be in German. If you go to Russia, it'll all be in Russian. And not only is it just translated, the stories are relatable to Russians because the AI goes through and it really understands each plot of land. Like it knows what Tokyo is and it writes a dystopian world story about Tokyo. So not only is it just saying it in Japanese, it knows about Tokyo. And Tokyo is the easy example because everybody knows Tokyo. But like you could pick any plot of land on here. If you're from a small neighborhood outside of, I don't know, I'm not going to butcher these names, one of those names. It'll know that neighborhood, right? It'll write you a specific backstory. I'll tell you one funny story. When we were testing this in the US, I don't know, probably 6 months ago or so, we had players who were kind of coming in. We had a guy from Detroit who came in. He was an industrial painter from Detroit, and he clicked on his plot. And he's like, "Oh shit!" He was from a town north of Detroit, and that town had a story about a coffee shop that he goes to on Main Street, and he was like, "How does your game have a backstory about the coffee shop I go to in this small town north of Detroit?" He's like, "That's insane." He's like, I want to control this. Like, this knows about it. This is my town. I want to hold this town. How do I do it?" He was super fired up. So those are some of the proof points. But imagine that everywhere, all over the world. Like if you're in Inuit village north of Alaska, it'll have that as well. It's pretty wild.
Cool. I wanted you to go through sort of the elaborate token setup that you have and how that's going to be set up in the game, and I find that really interesting and wanted you to go through that a little bit.
Yeah, so on the companion app, we have one country token per country. You're buying along a bonding curve, and you're doing that in a social way. Along each season, which is daily amounts, you're doing some social coordination, and then you set an attack, and you basically go after another country's resources. And you could do that through banking attacks, or AI attacks, or healthcare attacks, or power grid attacks, and you will steal their resources, which is effectively a transfer of their country token into your own country token. Once a sufficient amount of liquidity on that smart contract has been held, it will automatically be listed onto a DEX for open trading with no vesting schedule, just automatic trading if you want. Within that, on a season basis, we also have this idea of lossless voting or vote to earn type mechanisms, where you can go in and through social coordination say, "Hey, I think the U.S. is going to blow up Canada," and you could vote on that initiative, and you will participate in some of the resources that are stolen, if it is true, for Canada. And so you will, on a daily basis, basically have a claim ticket saying, "Hey, I voted well," or "I participated in a country as a token holder that did something spectacular and stole resources." You're going to be able to participate in those ecosystem rewards, right? And so then that'll automatically just be a claim that'll go into your wallet and all those things. So each season is daily. It's 24-hour cycles. The first half of the day is basically social coordination, kind of aligning your tribe, figuring out what to do, how to position yourself, and all of it is connected through Telegram channels. So we have direct lines to the messenger portion. We also have live sports casting in the game to tell you what's happening. Like, "Oh, Travis just did a large token acquisition in Azerbaijan," or Ben just actually moved from, Canada into UK. Watch out what he's doing, right? And it'll also give you ground resorts and all this kind of stuff. So it gives you this really kind of like live sportscasting feel to what's happening to kind of fuel a lot of the social aspects of things. And then the back half of the day is actually submitting your attacks and submitting rules. So ultimately, the leader of a country, which is effectively the person with the most tokens in that particular country, has the decisions. But through social council and social coordination, you're going to align your kind of like tactic with what you agreed on socially, right? So there's also, some social capital that you have to kind of build up to maintain those things. But ultimately, you're going to say, hey, you know what? Ben just went to the UK. He didn't really like Canada anymore, so he's going to attack Canada. And that's what he submits. And then if that goes through, then he's going to take some of those Canadian country tokens. They're going to get pulled into UK. And not only did he bring a suitcase, but he also brought some token resources with him too. And then the rest of the UK token holders are going to be able to receive those items, and those are distributed through like a distribution curve. We'll go too far into the math, but Ben gets 2 parts, Nick gets 1 part, Travis gets 1 part, and it's just some distribution that we kind of reallocate those things. That goes to the country token holders as well as to the voters. And that's effectively the main portion of the game. You could set your attacks. You can also do cosmetic upgrades. So you can kind of memeify what flags look like. So, you could change the United States flag to, Mars or Moon or, whatever meme of the day it is. As country leaders, you can also create your own attack system. So you could say, Elon's election interference, or, whatever, like must stop Murad is like Murad unleashed meme, type thing. And things like that. So that's the main functionality of how the tokens work within the companion app. Through live operations, we are going to release the monument collection. And what that's going to allow you to do is a few things. It's going to allow you to create a concentration of attacks so that you can actually have more opportunity to steal resources and tokens from other countries. So concentration of monuments matter from a country standpoint. You'll also get discounting rates on token acquisition. Since you're buying along a Bonnie curve, it can increase in price. And so monuments actually give you a leg up, an advantage to kind of do a little bit of a hard reset and give you advantage compared to other people. So there's some arbitrage that kind of comes along with it. And then last, there's some espionage that comes along with it. So if you are not a country token holder, you cannot participate in Canadian chat. You have to have a country token, in a Canadian country token, to participate in that chat. Monuments allow you to actually be a spy. And so it adds this like additional layer of gamesmanship to it, where initially you were socializing with your tribe, and now there's one weird guy in the corner who looks like everyone's friend but is really not, and then all of a sudden you have to figure out who that person is. So that's like one of the things that I'm super excited about, carrying that forward into the main mobile game. So monuments interact with your land assets within the AAA shooter. And so you'll be able to, that's part of the progression scheme. So it's all dynamic NFTs that can be evolved over time. The land assets are dynamic NFTs. And then there is a token that sits over it. So when you are fighting during clan wars, there's actually token resources that are generated for that. And that's the main portion of the how the tokens are structured and intertwined between the games.
So first of all, don't out my plans to take over Canada, bro. I'm trying to go after that maple syrup goodness. But also, we are over time here. So I do want to thank you guys very much for coming on the pod. Really was very enjoyable to hear a little bit about the backstory and get some history and the growth of the mobile gaming sector and all that stuff. And also very excited about our future plans, with NT as well. So just gonna leave that as a little teaser for the audience. But Travis, Josh, I really appreciate you guys' time. Thank you for coming on, and we really appreciate you guys sharing everything that you have on the pod.
Dude, it's awesome. And one last thing I'll say is We're going to be dropping a cool narrator that you can talk to live, because a lot of this stuff sounds a little complicated. And if you got any questions, you can obviously reach out to us, but you can talk to this live narrator who'll be live next week. You probably saw him go live about 2 weeks ago, but if you got questions about how the game works, how the bonding curves work, how to play, you can talk live to this crazy live entity thing, and it'll answer any questions you have. So check it out.
Hell yeah. Love that. Thanks again, guys. Jared, Ben, always an absolute pleasure to co-host with you guys. And we will be back with another episode of Interlinked next week. Take care, everyone.